Hello everyone, this is Derek Franciosi showcasing my DAGD-100 final project. For this project, you were supposed to model a character, object, really anything from a picture, and in that case I did a cartoon drawing of a character that I really wanted to model. This ended up biting me in the butt pretty bad for a lot of reasons I will end up explaining. It was a really good learning activity and process that I would love to break down and show you guys, being that I recorded almost about everything for this project. So to start, I did a front and side view of the character, being that this was done in about a 3/4 view for the painting. It was a bit tricky to do because you kind of have to eyeball it and work from there. I've done art for just around a year now, so it wasn't terrible, but this ended up being a little bit hard to do in terms of modeling. As you'll see, I then started doing box modeling, and basically what that is for the most part is you start with a box and you start to make polygons from that box using the front and side planes that I ended up putting in 3ds, not 3ds Max, Maya. That was another thing too, as you were only supposed to use either 3ds Max or Maya, which are Autodesk programs. I don't think I was allowed to, but I ended up not using any ZBrush, 3D Sculpt, anything like that, even though I know there are easy ways to sculpt. I went with Maya, and granted, it was a lot harder to do. Again, it was a good learning process, and I hope to, work with that in the future and maybe go to ZBrush for once, but I digress. So basically, I just started tracing the lines, started making polygons, making the snout and the chin and the top of the head and all of that. Overall, that was kind of just, making sure everything worked right. I did this by mirroring basically, so I didn't have to do both sides, but I kind of did it too soon, as you'll see later on. Another thing that really saved me too was I don't know what they're called, but they're called like smooth lines basically. As you can see, a lot of this is pretty rigid, and I was kind of worried to smooth out the model too soon because I would end up, having to worry about making sure that I didn't have too many polygons to where it would be impossible to basically sculpt and refine my object. So luckily they had an option to where I was able to smooth the lines. Granted, this made my rigid model look like absolute garbage. It ended up making the final look actually pretty decent, and it ended up saving me later on, as I'll explain. I then started to add the hair as well, and then also tried to make the background, because of course I had to do everything in the program. So basically I took the picture from the reference and I painted the background over the character and then put that plane on Maya, which worked pretty well actually. Again, like I said, I've painted a little bit before, so it wasn't too tricky, and it doesn't really look too discernible. You really just look at it, and for the most part you can tell that it's the same thing, and that's what I was going for. I wasn't going to do the whole detail thing, being that it wasn't even going to be shown. So in terms of lighting, I played around with a lot of the Arnold lights. I ended up using the area lights because they worked well with the background plane. With the sky dome light, it distorted the picture and it brightened the plane, which is not what I want. I just want the plane in general to look normal, and I don't want it to be affected by lights for it, so I ended up using area lights. This of course led to it not looking completely real, being that I'm not using a 360 view, but the area lights did do a good job to kind of mask that, and it's not really too noticeable. So as you can see, I did the glasses. This was not actually that bad. I tried a few different methods, and I ended up just working from a cylinder and then hollowing it out. This is where the unwrapping came into play. I tried just about every type of unwrapping method: planar, cylinder, spherical, and I was never able to get something. So I gave up on that, and I just started working with the textures like before. I was actually able to unwrap one thing, and that was a sphere. I was able to actually paint the eyes in Photoshop and use those as the actual eyes in the model, and that really helped, because in terms of manipulating the same thing with lights, it would have been a lot more difficult, because again, you're supposed to replicate this picture as close as possible, and that's what I tried doing. So luckily I was able to do the eyes, but again, I wasn't able to do it with the head because it was just much too of a mess. Another change I also did too was use the horns. Before, it was a part of the character's head, but I actually ended up making them separate. Why? I don't know. I felt like it was gonna bite me in the butt later on, so I actually just ended up making them separate. And since, again, I already kind of had the character in place, I didn't need to rig anything, so it was able to stay in place. This goes to another thing that I ended up not doing, was the hair. The hair looked a little bit off in the renders, and I didn't actually quite like it, so I tried using XGen for hair, and that ended up being a waste of 2 hours. But I've never sculpted before, so this was kind of a bad idea. As you see with the time lapse, it kind of doesn't look right, being that this is a cartoony kind of type deal. So I ended up just scrapping it and breaking away from it and just kind of working with the hair. I ended up kind of fixing the hair and putting a different material on it that ended up looking just fine, actually. So after that, I was able to cut my losses and work with the hair again. Another thing that I did too was make the little specks on the side of the head. I tried this with a bunch of different methods. This started from basically trying to make noise on a plane and then kind of just making it pop out a little bit on the head. That didn't work, so I had to do it kind of a long way, and I made individual spheres for the character and put a texture on them, and then just worked from there and just kind of messed with them and made it look as close as possible. After this point, it's just final touches. Basically, all the lights go into play. I start to play around with lights, making sure everything shines right. Just really trying to make sure this looks as close as possible to the reference picture. And there we are. There's my final. Thank you guys for listening. This was definitely a longer process than I hoped, but I'm definitely glad I started this way earlier than later. There's a lot of things I learned, and there's a lot of things I still need to learn and need to get better at, because this project was very, very difficult, and it definitely was a step in the right direction, I think. I'm definitely looking forward to modeling an actual human head, because I think that's how most people start. Starting with a character head was a bit difficult, but it was definitely something different, and I'm kind of glad that I ended up doing this. And even though it's probably not going to get the best grade, it's worth a try. Thank you guys for watching, and have a good one. Bye.